Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I'm your host, Laura Navaqueen, and today's episode is especially close to my heart as we are diving into a topic that many parents can relate to. And this episode is about traveling with kids, especially babies. So, whether you're planning a family vacation, traveling for a business trip, traveling with little ones can be challenging at times, but don't worry, I've got you guys covered. So today I'll also be sharing with you 10 essential tips that I think would make it easier on you to make your journey smoother and more enjoyable. So let me back up a little here. First, I think that so often I hear from parents sometimes that they just don't necessarily want to travel because of the difficulty or challenges traveling with kids. Or I'll hear, I'll wait to take that trip until they're a little older and they understand maybe when they're 5 or 8 or 10, wait until they're older to better manage travel, especially long car trips or airplane trips or whatever it may be. And I'm no expert here, but I genuinely, truly believe that actually the earlier you get them used to traveling, it's just second nature to them. They get used to it, they are comfortable with it, even at, a couple months old, 2 years old, 3 years old, and they travel so well on a plane. Yes, of course, there are the days that there are hiccups and, the air pressure built up a little too much, or they're just a little cranky, but that's with anything and everything else. Just a day out to the mall can, result in a day that they're a little too cranky and acting up a little bit. But again, before I digress too much, traveling with them, in my opinion, earlier or sooner than later results in them traveling easily and more comfortably earlier on. And another reason I say that is because I travel not as often with work over the past year, but still travel pretty frequently, whether it be with work or when we take trips to go see family out in California. And I almost always take my kids. And now, that was easier said and done when I had one. But now we have three, and I don't like to go without my kids. So I like to pack everyone up and let's all go together, even on those business trips. And it makes it fun and exciting because then they get to see a new city, a new state overall, and experience it with us all together as a family. All right, let's dive into those tips before I digress too much further. Let's get started. Tip number one is to plan ahead and pack smart. Okay. One of the keys to successful travel with kids is planning ahead. Make a checklist of everything that you need and start packing early. I know that I always say that I'm going to pack like a whole week beforehand. I never really get around to packing that early. And if you can, great for you. But ultimately, just packing a couple days beforehand. So as other things arise mentally and that you remember, you can remember to pack them. So make a checklist of everything that you need to start packing. I usually create the checklist within the notes app on my phone. I have an iPhone, so it has a notes app with a little bubble circle so I can actually tap them and check them off as I pack them. And making sure that you're including all the essentials like diapers and snacks and favorite toys. Well, I don't really take like a whole bunch of toys, but like a few things to keep them um, entertained while on a flight or even a long drive. But mostly, let's talk about flights here and a change of clothes for everybody. So when we travel on a plane, of course, we check the luggage. We have all the car seats that need to go, which actually, just in case you didn't know, all car seats travel as checked luggage for free. And if you do want to take it on the plane, it still is free for children's or child's car seats, babies and children, toddlers also. And even my son, who's 7 years old and in a booster seat, his travels for free. But also for our carry-on. So we usually all have backpacks. The kids will have, like the baby will have his own diaper bag. And another tip is that babies' diaper bags don't count as your carry-on. So even if they're flying as a non-ticketed passenger, their diaper bag does not have to be your carry-on. It's included as a piece of baggage that's covered at no additional cost. But aside from that, even the ticketed passengers, like my 7-year-old and now 2-year-old, will take their backpack that has a few snacks, their water bottle that we can refill because, airport water bottle is like $8. more the merrier to you if you want to go buy several $8 water bottles while you're in the airport. But it also makes it easier if you have a water bottle, make sure it's empty when you go through TSA, because then they'll make you toss it, or go through security again. But taking in an empty water bottle, filling it once you get into the airport saves you on buying, those $8 water bottles, but also makes it easy just to constantly fill it. And the kids are already comfortable with their own water bottle as well. So again, within their backpacks, having some snacks, their water bottle, and a few things that they like to play with, some books. My son, who has his tablets and now has his I always forget what it's called. It's the Nintendo Switch, which he now has to play with as well. But having those things to keep them entertained on the flights, because most flights we take are not short. The shortest is probably a 2-hour flight, and that's when we're going to and from New York and Florida. But other than that, we're usually going coast to coast, and that's about 5 to 6 hours. So having something that they can be entertained, and also a sweater, because even if it's 100 degrees outside, it always cools off in the airplane. And I don't know about you or your children, but we always tend to get a little cold or want to get comfy when we fall asleep on a flight. So having those things in the carry-ons. And then so pack each child's bag separately. They all get their own carry-on, with being uh, a ticketed passenger. And yes, even that baby gets their own carry-on. So you don't have to worry about stuffing all the diapers and their changes of clothes and all their things and taking the space away from your bag that has your wallet or computer or whatever it may be that you're traveling with. And then also having a well-organized bag makes a huge difference. So when you're looking for things quickly, having a bag that is organized or just easy to organize as well. Tip number 2 is choose the right flight times. This really can be up to you guys because everyone has their own preferences. So if possible, book flights around your kids' nap times or bedtimes. Flying during these hours can help make it easier for us. I also really like, and I know this one's controversial, I like red-eye flights. We all sleep. So not only are they the most inexpensive, but everyone is going to sleep. Don't have to worry about, all the trips down the aisle to go to the potty several times. Don't need to worry about anyone getting fussy or wanting more snacks because we all sleep. I know it's a controversial one though, because most people don't like red eyes, but I actually prefer them and like them, especially when going coast to coast. It also helps with jet lag. It helps us with jet lag. But choose the right flight times that work for you and around your preferences. Tip number 3 is prepare for security. And this I also mentioned earlier with that water bottle. If you are taking a water bottle through, making sure it's empty when you go through. So security checks can be stressful with kids, so be prepared. And if you aren't already, I highly recommend you signing up for services such as Clear or pre-TSA. I have pre-TSA and I've been a member now for 7-8 years and love it. And I can't speak for Clear specifically because I've never had that service personally, but with pre-TSA even, you you pay for the service or the feature, and it lasts like 4 years, I think, or something. It's a number of years. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it lasts a number of years and it's pretty inexpensive. It's like maybe $75, $100 every couple of years. And all of your children that are under the age of 12 are included within that. So they don't need their own subscription or whatever you want to call it. And when you go through, usually it's a shorter line. Okay, before, maybe I'm sharing this tip, the lines are tending to get a little longer. But usually it's a shorter line than the general TSA line. Also, you don't need to take off your shoes. Normally, you don't need to take out tablets and computers out of your backpack. Don't need to take out baby food and snacks or whatever it may be. Still, if I'm taking through milk for the little ones, that still usually has to get manually checked, but it saves so much time not having to unpack all the backpacks and lay everything out or take off everyone's shoes getting through security and whatnot. But ultimately, be prepared for security. whether you have clear or pre-TSA, but ultimately just having your bags organized, or making sure if you are taking water bottles through that they are empty when you go through, because then you'll either have to toss them or they'll make you actually get out of line and go through again so you can go out and drink it or empty it and go through again, which if you're like us, we're usually, rushing to our flights. So I don't necessarily recommend that, but you do you. Number 4, bring snacks and entertainment. Again, I mentioned this in like my tip number 1, but just to reiterate, because this really keeps the kids entertained. So keeping them entertained and satisfied with some snacks and a variety of activities. For my 2-year-old, she has some books, maybe a doll or something. My 7-year-old, as I mentioned, he has his tablet and he has a Switch that he's now playing with. And then also just making sure that they are charged, and also recommend having a battery pack to charge them again as the charge goes down, but making sure they're charged from the beginning, having a charged battery pack with you. And if you need to reload apps or games or anything like that onto the tablets, or refresh them because you had things downloaded from Disney Plus or Netflix or whatever it may be, making sure that's done ahead of time, because either there's no signal to do so on the plane, or you have to pay for Wi-Fi, and usually it doesn't download very easily or quickly if you have to re-download some of those onto your devices. And I know that from experience. But even a long car drive, because we'll do this for our son when we were driving from New York to Florida and back and forth, to keep him entertained. And then just a small friendly activity. Also things work like coloring books for our 2-year-olds, stuff like that. And tip number 5, use a travel-friendly stroller or carrier. Two things to mention with this. So with the toddlers and the baby, with my daughter, I got this really cute carrier. It was so cute. I loved the print, but it was not user friendly. So, although being stubborn and wanting to use it, it was hard to take on and off, put the baby in and out quickly, but being able to move back to the old carrier that we had, which was so much easier to use and get the baby in and out quickly and snap on and take off, makes a world of a difference when trying to get on and off a plane quickly. Also with the stroller, we had one of those pocket strollers before, which actually folds, because I don't like to check my stroller. One, either I feel like it'll break, or I just don't want it to be dirty and having to stuff it into a case last minute, or gate checking it even without putting it inside something. To me, that just kind of gives me the ick factor. I don't like that personally, because, who knows what it touches, and your kid's going to be sitting and laying on it thereafter. But the stroller, recommend some of those small compact ones. Before, as I mentioned, we had the pocket stroller, which isn't, the cheapest, but it's well worth the investment. So you can take it on board and put it in the carry-on overboard, and it even actually fits in the seat under you, in front of you, if need be. And if it's in a backpack, a regular backpack, I'm not even talking about like one of those large jumbo backpacks, just a regular backpack, like a JanSport backpack, it fits inside of that, because that's how I carried that one for years. But there's that one. The other one that I like, it's actually a little bit more, but it's even more versatile of a stroller, especially for traveling. So if you're going to be traveling pretty frequently, even a couple times a year, it's highly worth it, in my opinion. That is the baby. Oh my goodness. I will tag it in the show notes below. I can't recall what it is off the top of my head right now. I'm blinking, but that one is, I like it so much better. The undercarriage part of it is a little bit bigger, so you can fit a little bit more into it. It has a compartment in the back, in case you need to slip something into it. The shade part of it opens bigger, so it has better coverage versus the pocket stroller, and it also reclines. So that was also one of my big things with the pocket stroller. It didn't really recline. So if and when baby fell asleep, versus this other one, it reclines. And there's also the option to put a bassinet on it for the newborn or infant under 6 months old as well. So again, having travel-friendly strollers and carriers. We will see how we do it upcoming, because we're getting ready to travel. I have some speaking engagements in Texas and Nashville, and who knows, we'll be in California maybe then in the month for something. And our kids are going to go with us. But if now that we have a 2-year-old and a couple-month-old, a 3-month-old, they use a double stroller. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know if I want to take that big stroller. But again, travel friendly stroller and carriers make a significant difference. Tip number 6, dress comfortably. We always like to I like to wear either leggings and a t-shirt and a sweater because I always get cold. Again, even if it's 100 degrees outside, I get cold on the plane. Even the children, I'll have them wear something comfortable, sweatpants or even jeans and a t-shirt, but always take a sweater because they always get cold, or one of those compact blankets. Which some of my favorites are the Eddie Bauer camping blanket because it rolls up and folds down into a small, compact um, bundle. Or I'm showing you if you're on the YouTube. If not, it's pretty small, that can fit in a backpack, or even has like a little snapping hook to attach to the outside of your backpack. But it's also so warm, and it's pretty warm, and opens up pretty large so it can fit across two of us in the seats as well. So I highly recommend that. Number 7, manage ear pressure. And this is, I would say for all of us, because, even yourself, when you're going up and down as that plane is, hitting a um, it's going up there, that you can get the ear pressure. But we as adults, we know to chew gum, or how to unplug our ears. But of course for children this can be challenging. And yes, even our 7-year-old, I like to have him have some snacks or chew on things, especially during takeoff and landing. But he's a little easier to help manage that now that he's a little older. But especially for the kids, give them snacks as they are taking off or landing, or have some gum ready with you. I recommend that. I don't almost ever give my kids gum, even the 7-year-olds, but in the case for instances like this, if they have that significant ear pressure, chewing on some gum for a little bit can help alleviate and get rid of that ear pressure. But again, for a 2-year-old, some snacks during takeoff and landing. And then especially for the baby, usually either giving a bottle, or if you're breastfeeding, feed them during takeoff and landing helps significantly to relieve any ear pressure. Actually, just prevent it, not even just to relieve it, but to prevent it. And if need be for the baby, a pacifier as well. If they do take a pacifier, it can help soothe them during takeoff and landing, and also just help prevent the buildup of ear pressure. Tip number 8, stick to a routine as closely as possible. So, especially for the little ones, everyone gets tired traveling, even for myself. We get tired traveling, especially if you're going into different time zones. So, getting jet lag, or just being out of routine, or having been up really early for a flight, or whatever it may be. But if you can, try to stick your kids to have a nap still throughout the day, even if the times don't align. They almost never align for us, but still allowing them, or trying to encourage them to take a nap and have certain meal times throughout the day, not skipping out on meals, to try to keep things as consistent as possible to avoid crankiness and just moodiness at the end of the day with them. Number 9, be patient and flexible. Again, as I mentioned, everyone's getting tired with a long day of travel, but traveling with kids requires a little extra patience, time. Allow yourself the time and be flexible so things don't always go as planned. That's actually with anything and everything, but things don't always go as planned, and that's okay. So be prepared for any expected delays and changes because they happen. This one I'm really going to say with a grain of salt because easier said than done. I struggle with this, when flights are delayed or canceled altogether. We have that. So personally, I would never fly certain airlines anymore because they make it all the more challenging when that happens, by not providing any accommodations at all. But just being mindful of this, having a few extra snacks in your backpack in case flights are canceled or delayed, having that as well. Number 10, finally, again, let me think about, I'm trying to decide how to phrase this one, but communicate with your kids. Keeping those lines of communication open with your kids can by explaining the travel process to them in simple terms, just letting them know what to expect and involving them in preparations and giving them a sense of control over their own little travel kits and backpacks helps them understand the journey and helps them reduce anxiety. Like, I don't think my kids really have anxiety about traveling, or never voiced it or said anything about being scared to fly on a plane or anything like that. But I do think that having the communication with them prior to a trip does build the excitement. My 7-year-old, he gets so excited. He does want to start packing like a week before. Um, but start packing. He gets excited to make sure his backpack is ready to go with some snacks, or, we'll do a Target run or whatever, maybe to buy some special snacks for the trip, making sure his tablet and his devices are charged and ready to go. But he gets super excited. And then also is my little helper when we are at the airport as well, especially with his little siblings. But just having that communication with them, because it helps them being more cooperative, keeps the excitement up, and just makes the whole travel and the trip smoother overall. All right, guys. So that's a wrap for today's episode. I know this one was a little out of a line compared to the topics of conversation that we normally discuss here on Good Grace and Growth, but I thought it was um, rather relative to share with you guys, because many of us are parents, many of you guys are parents as well. So even when you guys travel with the little ones, especially if you travel as frequently as we do with them, it just helps make the whole process a little smoother, and just to be more conscious of these things. Sometimes we read an article in a magazine as far as like the top 10 tips on how to travel easier, but just like being more conscious of hearing it, because you could be listening to this podcast as you're driving to and from a meeting today or whatever it may be. But thank you guys for joining me on this episode of Good Grace and Growth. And I hope that these tips help make your next trip smoother and more enjoyable, whether it's a business trip or just a family vacation. And if you found this episode helpful, please share with other parents who might benefit from it or are scared to take that plane trip or a long road trip because of the anticipation of how the kids are going to receive it. Share it with them. And until next time, guys, travel safe and take care. Bye-bye.